Hey, it's Jordan from Outway Finance here. Now, did you know that most banks, when they assess your loan, add a 3% buffer on top of the actual rate of interest that you pay? So you're assessed at a rate 3% higher. They want you to afford a loan 3% higher than what you are actually going to pay, which is why their assessment of your servicing looks very different from your assessment. Now, this is enforced largely by regulation, with some optionality with the banks. But it drives a very important point home in that we should be thinking about our own buffers. It has surprised me as I make this video in the same week as an interest rate increase, which was largely expected, that there is this ongoing debate every time that there's an increase to the Reserve Bank rate, that people are under stress, and that there should be some other measure used to bring down inflation. Well, that's what the Reserve Bank does. That's their only tool. So that's always a difficult conversation. But the point is, if the banks are, by regulation, assessing loans with a 3% buffer, and we are well into a cycle, we haven't reached 3% since the lowest point, and we're well into a cycle where people have had time to adjust, and certainly new loans written in the last 12 months would be well within that buffer. It surprises me that there are so many people under stress. And it goes to a couple of things which really need to come back into our dialogue around the kitchen table, talking about finance, between advisors and clients, talking about finance, between brokers and their clients, and which is buffers. Buffers don't just come down to ensuring that you've got something that works with a 3% higher interest rate. There are many things that goes into whether or not you can continue to pay your loan. What you earn, what you spend, what you can sell, what you can restructure. Going into any loan, you need to have a view of all of those things, and so does your advisors if you're not used to looking at things in that way. And so when costs start to increase, being a victim isn't very helpful. It's power sucking. It takes the power away from you to do something about that. But if you've had some pre-thought about what you might do if times get tough, then the chances are you will feel less powerless, and you will have ready-made plans to deploy to address those challenges. So when interest rates go up, and generally that's in a situation where there's inflation, so there's rising costs anyway, one of the natural reactions is to decrease your own costs. Now, it's easy to do with a household budget. If you want to, that's the key. There needs to be a willingness to do this, right? So, buy different brands, buy less, take care of what you waste, take care of, things around the house that don't need to be done. You can put off expenditure. You can scale back the ambitions of your holidays. Now, all of these things aren't really nice, but they are necessary responses, and you've got to be prepared to do them. They are part of the response that puts you in the power to address something like rising costs. But that's just one dimension. That's costs only. Income is another dimension, and there are many ways to augment your income. First of all, if you're in a job that allows you to do overtime and you have the approval of your bosses, you can work more. You can look at promotions. You can ask for that promotion. You can ask what it takes to receive the promotion. You can push for a pay rise. You can look for another job. There are many angles like that. You can pick up a second job. You can do a side hustle. And of course, all of these things aren't easy. They do, again, require the willingness to go and do these things. But it's a very different thought process. It's a very different psychology from saying the Reserve Bank increased, my bank increased, I'm now a victim of a thing I can't control. So that's just the income. But if you have multiple properties, or if you even have one property, or if you have a property and some cars and a boat, or there are things you can do there. Rising interest rates is an opportunity to reassess your bank and reassess the structure of that loan, the term, whether it's fixed, whether it's interest only, and how much debt you owe, because chances are if you're midway through a home loan, you've actually paid down your loan a significant chunk from when it was first put in place, which means if you were to refinance the balance of that loan, the repayments would be far less, simply because the calculated principal component of those repayments would be far less. Long term, that might cost you more in interest because you keep the debt there for longer. But if you are seriously up against the wall, these are the measures, these are the responses that can be taken. I call them battle lines, right? And this applies to business, this applies to life. When the challenges come, you can draw battle lines, a position that you can fall back to, that you can retreat to, and then retreat to again, depending on how tough things get. So the first line that you might draw is to say, we are simply going to change the brands that we buy at the shops, and it might only save $50 a week. But it is a battle line, and you can prepare to make that change relatively easy in the scheme of all of these other changes that you can make. But it's easy to implement, it's not too painful, so that might be your first battle line. And then you might draw another line and another line, depending on how dire it gets. And this is really much more important than just interest rates and inflation. We have been through a shock in the last 5 years. COVID-19 was a huge impact to many, many people. And there were some winners and some clear losers, obviously. Retail was hit really, really hard, and that's the real shame, cafes and restaurants particularly. So there are battle lines to draw in those situations too, and you might have to skip a few to really go back to basics. Likewise, we don't talk enough about resilience and optionality. Okay, so these are other responses to particularly large and unexpected problems that might occur, such as a global pandemic, or let's go back a few years before that, and there was a global financial crisis. The concept of resilience is having a buffer ready to go, not just in the measures you might take, but in the readily deployable assets that you can liquidate. And that means having savings. That's a rainy day fund. That's the old concept of a rainy day fund. It is an insurance policy, for example, and that particular shock that I'm talking about there could be cancer, it could be a life-threatening injury, something that takes you out of work. Insurance is really, really important in those circumstances. Likewise, if your house burns down, insurance is very important. Most people understand that element, these large shocks and how insurance can help. But think of it in your entire life setup as well. And then we talk about optionality, right? And this is like adapting to shocks. This is about having other directions that you can move into when the going gets tough. And it actually cuts both ways. Optionality is great when you are presented with opportunities and you're able to move into those opportunities really, really quickly. Now, for example, optionality in the income space might mean a side hustle or a second qualification. It might mean having a good network, someone you can lean upon who might be able to get you a pretty cool position elsewhere if the job you're in currently falls through. But it's really important to take stock of these, take an inventory of these things. You have your battle lines that you can draw when the going gets tough. You build your buffers in terms of your cash savings. You get your insurances in place, and you think about the responses you can take if there's other great big shocks in your life. And what it does, going right back to the beginning, takes all the angst and powerlessness out of these situations. It's not in any way saying that the Reserve Bank lifting its interest rates doesn't suck. It sucks. It sucks for everybody. But for others, for many, they have an idea about how they will respond and continue to move and roll with the punches, and sometimes even prosper out of the situation. And I'll just cap off really quickly by saying, for example, when Reserve Bank increases interest rates, generally that means returns in other places are also going to go up. Or it might mean that the returns associated with cash in the bank are more attractive. So whichever way you see it, you might be able to actually benefit from those situations. So, just wanted to share that pearl of wisdom. Thank you for listening. Jordan from Outway Finance here. Get in touch if you want any more, and catch you in the next one.